Hello, and thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Todd Baginski, and welcome to the January 21 PowerApps Community Call. As usual, I'm joined by my partner in PowerApps here, Charles Sterling. Chuck, how are you today? Chuck's doing good, down joining us from Florida. And in case all of you haven't joined us on the PowerApps Community Call before, a little bit about our call. We do this every month on the third Wednesday at the same time, 8 a.m. Pacific time. Our next call will be on February 17th. Every month that we do this call, we bring you the latest news and community contributions from around the land of PowerApps and related technologies. We meet the product teams behind PowerApps, and we do technical deep dives with awesome folks from all around the world in the PowerApps community, like these three folks we have joining us here today. So we'd like to give a warm welcome to Bryant, Hazim, and Deepak today, and they are going to be talking to us about how to get started with PowerApps portals, how to debug your PowerApps with the monitor, and then really cool integration scenarios on how to integrate services with the new Azure API Management Connector from Deepak. And then Chuck and I also have great PowerApps news and community contributions to share with you, as always. So before we jump into Brian's session here on PowerApps Portal, all of us, you see here on the slide from the PowerApps crew, would like to thank you for joining us. And we'd like to give a big shout out to Dana, Andrew, Heather, and Gabriel. Y'all see Chuck and myself every month, but these four folks are working really hard behind the scenes to produce the videos and get them out to all of you. And we know most people actually watch this recorded. So hats off to all of them for helping promote the call and make it happen so you can all see it anytime you like. One thing that makes our call really cool is the fact that people from all over the world are here to answer your questions. We have folks right now in the chat channel, these folks here usually, as well as many others. If you're here all the time and answering questions, shoot me a note. I would love to put your name up and picture up here too, give you a shout out as well. But basically, people who are PowerApps MVPs, PowerApps team members, PowerApps champions, Power addicts, Power this, that, the other thing, they're all here to help you. So just ask a question in chat if you're unblocked, and we'll get you unblocked on whatever that case may be. So thanks to all these awesome folks for helping out every month. And that brings us over to Brian. So Brian, thanks again for joining us. So what has it been, about 4 or 5, 6 months since the last time you joined us?
Absolutely, thank you.
Cool. So you're going to talk to us about PowerApps portals today, and I understand you're working on a portal apps project right now, huh?
Quite a few of them, actually. Yeah. They have a pretty big need on those. So what we'll talk about now is the kind of need for those. So I have 3 hours, right, Todd?
Minus a little bit.
All right, no problem. I started my timer, so I'll behave. I'll keep it under 2 hours then. Fine. Well, yeah. So there's a lot of things that PowerApps can do, Todd. And a lot of it comes down to not wanting to license every citizen in your county, for example, or every student, for example. So finding those use cases where you can build these beautiful PowerApps, but have it as a website is where kind of PowerApps portals really fits in. It's a most common request that the PowerApps team had for a long, long time. So on the PowerApps portal side, there's a few requirements before you begin. It does require the data has to be stored in the Dataverse. So Common Data Service is the old name, or Dataverse is the new name. And some of the neat things it can support is it has internal providers like Azure AD, for example, for logging in, or it has external providers like LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, or even like a local login provider as well that you can actually house all the logins in. That's one of the cool things about portals is it kind of resembles a little bit like WordPress, but allows you to interact with these similar to model-driven apps, model-driven forms, and Dataverse within a few seconds. Matter of fact, I'm going to build one live for you in a few minutes, and you'll see how fast it is to get down to the row-level security easily here. So these perfect use cases that we find is, imagine you're a tax accountant or an insurance company, and you want to find out the latest tax information for all of your customers. Now you can build spend $40,000, $50,000 building out an app. You can build out a Power App, a Canvas app, for example, and then license all 2,000 of your customers. Or alternatively, a Power App portal might make sense. In this case, rather than have to license every single person, I'm basically licensing a capacity for those users to come in. So you license it by 100,000 views and then by batches of 100 logins. Now, those logins can come in and out in a day. So you might be the login today. I might be the login tomorrow. I can log in and out in one. Now, the tools of the trade, there's two tools that you're going to really be in most frequently. One is the portal management tool, and then one is the portal designer, where you'll do your front-end kind of development and coding. Those are the two main tools of the trade. And of course, you'll be in Dataverse quite a bit, living in there, building your forms out and all that. So with that now done, let's go ahead and go out and build one together. So the scenario we're going to do is I am a school system, the Pawnee school system, and I want to go ahead and allow Todd to register for football and for the 4-H club and all those kind of clubs. Go ahead and register registration. So I have a really simple example we're going to use for that. So I'm going to hop out real quick if I can find my screen. There we go. All right. So again, the tools the trade will use, you'll see I already have built a portal. So you can build the portal right here under portal from blank. That's how you'll actually build out your system. And let me kind of keep this open, Todd. And if you have any questions that are burning at a certain time, please feel free to interrupt me also. So
I do have one back to the licensing that I've heard people ask me before about the logins. I'm sure everybody would like to know. You get 100 logins a day, you said, right?
Right.
What happens if I log in today and tomorrow? Am I counted twice or just once?
So it's daily logins. So if you come in and out the same day, count as one login, but the minute the midnight strikes, it's a second login at that point.
Gotcha.
So you get 100 of those daily logins a day for that $200 basically. So when you think about it, Microsoft's hosting your web server, and if I was to host a server in Azure, put my app out there for WordPress or whatever it might be, I'm probably around that same dollar figure. It's when you get into the thousands. I mean, we have some customers that have, for example, we did a COVID application for registering for COVID relief for my county, and we had about 20,000 applications we received in a matter of a few weeks. So in that case, we were licensing the entire county of 1.2 million people, but we knew 1.2 million people were going to come in. Now, it's not a hard limit. Microsoft doesn't shut you down hard at a certain point, but they are scaling that server accordingly to the amount of logins they think you're going to have. So if you have 101, it's not like all of a sudden you're hardcore shut down, but you might get some slowdowns. You might get some weirdness that occurs after that. Hopefully that answers your question, Todd, or others' questions as well.
That and most of the related questions to it as well.
All right, cool. Because we definitely hit that mark in the county where we announced the COVID application relief, and we got above what we licensed, and but then when we got much above it, it definitely started slowing down to where we got some timeouts. So I would start the application by hitting portal from blank. Each environment in PowerApps can have one portal. Now that one portal can have multiple websites underneath it. So you can actually custom brand each website, have your own little vanity URL and all that. So what I do next is I had the Pawnee school system here. So I'm going to open it up, and let me go cancel that. And it looks like this. There we go. This is my Pawnee school, and this is just out of the box. The only thing I've done is I changed this little title right here, and I added a few web pages. But pretty much, it's a pretty nice looking website in a few seconds. After I do that, I'm going to go ahead and create a new page, and I want to go ahead and allow you to list what registrations that you have registered for, Todd. That's my goal here. So, and it is caching right now. Looks like there it goes. All right, so I'll call this, my program registrations. All right, and I'll give it a nice little URL stub here of program-reg, something like that. Now, at this point, you'll see you have a whole list of components. You can actually interface with CSS. You can write code here. If you are a coder, you can absolutely do that. But in my case, I'm just going to drop in a list right here. Now, this list comes from a PowerApps Dataverse. So in this case, if I go and select list, it's going to drop it in. It's going to ask, well, where do you want to get your list from? I'm going to create a brand new one. And I'm going to go ahead and call this one registrations. All right. And I'm going to look for my registration table inside of Dataverse. Can I have two of them here somewhere? That darn alphabet always eludes me. There we go. There we go. And in just a few seconds, when I point to my view here, I've got a view called, oh, I think that's it. Okay, active registrations. As soon as I do that, you're going to notice it will go ahead and refresh the screen in a moment. You have to watch out in the bottom right here. The bottom right, it will go from saved to saving to saved. And then there we go. So now I'm able to see all the registrations I have out there. I can go and do a browse website here. And in a few moments here, we'll see our new web page. Okay, and I think it's been a little bit sluggish on the browse. Now, when you hit browse, it is purging the cache. Reloading the cache to the website can be peppy. This process has been a little bit sluggish today, so I'm going to go back over here again and just hit a control refresh, and there's new program registrations. Here we go. And what we're seeing is that the same thing I have in Dataverse, you can see the same thing there that I have in a model-driven application, just a simple listing of this. And the view we're seeing here was created in the Dataverse also, in the table in the Dataverse. So if I want to modify this, I can create a customized view for this. I can do filters, I can do sorting, whatever I wish to do. But now I want to make sure that I'm the only one that can see my own records. You're seeing I have Barbara Jones, Cha-Ching, and Chuck Sterling in here. I want to make sure that Brian's the only one that can see Brian's records. And that's where the real power in this comes. So I'm going to go back over here again. This is the application called Portal Management. And when you create a portal, this shows up in your listing of applications. So I'm going to create a new entity permission. This is where I'm basically saying there's a relationship between a registration and a person that's making that registration. So I'll hit this new registration button, and I'll call this just program reg. Okay. And I'll go ahead and select my entity. Okay. Of course, my daughter picks right now to start playing piano. She always does that when I'm on calls or recording. All right. Looking for a registration.
It's better than an electric guitar, Brian.
That's true. Or my son does also. There's my portal right there. So I can have multiple websites here, but I have this just one. Now the scope is pretty important here. The scope is asking us, well, how do I get from a registration to a person? Is this a global permission that applies to everybody? Is it a contact level permission, a row level security to where Todd can only see his own record? Or more importantly, is it an account permission where anybody at Todd's company can see any of his registrations as well as any of the other employee at his company? So that's pretty useful where you might have 10 people all registering for this, that you want them all to be able to see each other's, but nobody else is at the companies. I'm going to do a contact level, and then it's going to ask me, well, how do I get from a contact to a registration? Now, this is in Dataverse. I've created a lookup for that registration to go to the contact. That is the name of the lookup right there. And it was created automatically when I created that Dataverse piece. And then I'm going to specify what kind of rights you have. I'm just going to go ahead and check them all for the time being, but normally you would not be that generous. I'll hit save. And then where does this role apply to? In this case, I have a web role already created, and it's called web user. All right, so I'm now done. I now have, after I save this, you'll notice that I now have row level security turned on. That easy. It's a little tricky at first, and I do have a video just dedicated to this, a little bit more elaborate. So when I hit refresh now, you'll notice in a moment that now, all right, I may hit the, I know the problem. I am signed in right now. Okay, well, for some reason it's being a little, I know the problem. So when I went through this process of creating this list, the part I skipped intentionally at the time was I forgot to go over to permissions. And on this individual list right here, I can go through and say, enable entity permissions. And by checking that box, I can also turn on search if I wanted to, but by checking this box right here, it's going to say, all right, I'm going to lock down this list here, and you can only see your own records. Again, watch that saved here. I click outside the white box, goes to saving, then goes back to saved again. You can also, by the way, turn on, hey, I want to be able to create new records. And what form do you want to point to? I'm going to point to a web page I've already created, and it's called New Program Registration. There we go. I can also do deletes, and I'll do an edit, same exact thing. I'll go ahead and do an edit with that same web page. New Program Registration. Oh, that's under Edit Registration. There it is. So when I'm all done, I think that's it at least, I'll go ahead and hit browse one more time. Again, it's going to purge the cache, reload the cache. In a few seconds, hopefully, There, okay, it did do its thing. I'll go back here and refresh this again. Okay, there we go. I have my create button now. I'm only seeing my own record. I can also go through and edit and delete that record as well. And anything I do in here, if I hit create, for example, now a few things about the create. This is a form I've already created. Again, it take about 2 minutes to create this. What program I'm registering for? I'm registering for the yearbook club. I could default this to my name, and I would default this to my name, but in my case, I have not wired this form up to do that. Any kind of special request you have, I'll hit submit. And then once I hit submit, we're routed back. Let me go back to my program registrations. And now we're seeing 2 registrations, okay? And again, you can delete it. All that wiring is all done for you automatically. And the cool thing about all this is as I do this, if I go back over to this application right here, this is the model-driven app. As I make these changes, it shows up automatically in my model-driven app also. So everything holds each other's hands. You see Brian K here, Yearbook Club, and there's Brian K in football. Those all match up to what we're seeing right here, yearbook and football. And as I go through and delete that record, all right, kill that record there, inside of the model-driven app, which could be in Canvas, could be model-driven. You see that record got axed there also. So all these things all hold hands together and sing Kumbaya. There's some really neat things you can do with this, though, but it's a really neat way of scaling Dataverse out to tens of thousands of people. One of the strategies we had to do to kind of when we had that COVID application, the CARES Act money, we had to make sure that we didn't announce it to everybody on the same day. We would announce it to, we would kind of slow roll it, announce it on social media. Then we did it to the some other people, and then we actually did a press release. So we didn't want a million people all hitting the servers at one time. But at one point, we had close to 400,000 views in one day, and it held up strong. And our app held up strong also. What we did not want was a healthcare.gov scenario where and Florida had some really bad problems with the unemployment website crashing and crumbling. This held strong. And thanks to help from Microsoft also, we were ready ahead of time, so we were skilled appropriately, and it worked out really, really well. Todd, I think I've got 30 seconds left. I hit the timer.
That was great. You're all good. I was pretty brief at the beginning today, so we have the time for a little chat. The other thing that I noticed about what's on your screen right now is whenever you're building a solution like this, great, you collect the data, but people need to get it, and they need to get it quick, right? Boom, right at the top, export to Excel, right there.
Yes.
So
this is more than
I just want to point it out because maybe people didn't understand that was just built into this solution too. There's run report, attach a flow to it when an item lands in this list, et cetera, et cetera. Your extension points off these are identical to if you built a Canvas app or your own web app.
That's what's brilliant about the Dataverse, right? Is I build it one time. If I go over to my data tables here and I go to tables and I look for that registration table, if I modify this, there it is right there. If I go ahead and make any changes to this, if I go over to my views here and I say, I want to sort it a different way, for example, this is how I actually modify Portal, model-driven, and even a Canvas app if you wanted to. So if I want to put special requests down here, for example, so I can click on that, and I hit save, and hit publish. All right, and it's a few seconds. All right, come on. It's always fast until you're trying to do a web meeting, right? All right. Normally, you would see
yeah, it shows up right away though. That's the point. Couple clicks, drag this over to here, click, and now it's on your website.
There's my special request there. And likewise, over here, in a few moments, it will also refresh this. I may have to go ahead and browse the website again to get the latest cache. But oh, there it is, extra eliminate. So there we go. So now we're seeing on all those pieces, I change it in one location, Dataverse, and every application that's consuming it will automatically change also.
I can't remember the last time I worked with an app like that, quite honestly. In a long time, if ever. I have one more question for you. So you mentioned you built 20 or so of these, maybe more. I've only stood up a portal about 5 times, and it's been a couple months since I did it. I'm curious, how long does it take to stand up a portal nowadays? I know you did this one in advance. Is it still a couple-hour process?
The most interesting example was, all right, if I go over to my county here, this was a real live example. Oh, I'm not going to make that government. Okay, that's fine. This is my county. And for my county, they were looking at, they had to distribute this CARES Act money, right? And again, this is a very basic website here, but I can see my login here. I'm not seeing any of my applications right now. So in their case, they were looking at, they had millions of dollars about to hit their accounts. They had to get out to the citizens, and they had to do this really, really quickly. Remember how crazy COVID was early on? So in their case, they were looking at, they were getting quotes for like 4 to 6 months to stand up a portal like this. We were able to knock this out in about a weekend. So to get the beta out in a weekend, and they were live within a week. So it's you can get these out pretty quickly. Now, this is a very basic one here. It's doing a very little stuff here. And you'll notice the logins are actually shut down right now. But when the CARES Act money was around, we had logins they can actually sign up for their own account. They can register for their own account. They can actually have multiple languages here also. So when I sign in here, because we're in Florida, one of the common things we wanted to do is want to make sure that we speak their own language. So down at the bottom, we can actually select Spanish. You can select whatever language you wish there. But it has a whole bunch of cool stuff inside there.
Outstanding. And you built it so fast to help people out in a real tangible way. That's awesome.
And they can take some time. Now, the language behind all this, by the way, you have a whole bunch of different language, but the languages to actually make this website really look good, and this one does not look really, really good because it was a weekend of work, right? But the language there is Liquid, and it's the same one that Shopify uses and a few other platforms use. So you can make it look really, really slick. This grid that you're seeing right here, that's just out of the box native, but you can customize that however you want. Do your own for each loops and make it look a lot cleaner.
Fantastic. Yeah, Liquid's not too hard to work with either. I got a chance to do that a couple times on these portals recently. Awesome. Very good. Thanks for sharing that with us. And what a great story to help people out with COVID, to build something in the course of a weekend, and now people are getting their relief. That's great. More community, right, Brian?
Amen.
Not just the PowerApps community, the whole Florida community there. That's great. Cool. Super. So the next thing that we have today is talking about diagnostics using the Monitor tool. Brian, you ever use these to work on your
I've had to, because it's some pretty rough. When you inherit code, sometimes you're like, "What is taking so long with this thing?" And the monitoring tool is one of the best ways of doing it. It seems like.
Yeah, I love this tool. So we're really lucky today to have Hazim here to tell us all about the tool and show us a monitor of it. So welcome. Thanks for joining us here today too.
Thanks, Todd. And hello, everyone. I'm Hazim. I'm a PM. One of the part of the infrastructure and quality group, and this is part of the PowerApps Studio team. I'm relatively new. This is, I think, my 4th month in the team, but I'm quite excited about what we're doing, and also sharing many of the tools that we are working on and features to the rest of the community. Today, I'm going to be talking about Monitor, and traditionally, makers and developers used to use tools like Fiddler, Chrome DevTools, and other tools to just like troubleshoot their apps while they're building them, trying to figure out what's wrong, what's not working, and how to optimize things. And it did actually and still work, but it was a little bit of overhead to use those tools, especially when you try to integrate them with Power Studio and try to actually filter and figure out what exactly is happening. And this is when we introduced Monitor back in around October 2019. And since then, it has gone into general availability back in December 2020. And what Monitor does is mainly, it is a troubleshooting and diagnostic tool that is native to the PowerApps Studio. And makers can use that tool mainly to view real-time events streaming while they're both either in studio editing and designing their apps, or actually to troubleshoot and view the events and behavior of published apps. So the typical use case and most common use case for Monitor is to mainly troubleshoot an app or a solution that has something wrong, or you think that, okay, there is actually some room for optimization and improving the performance of an app, for example. But I also find it very useful and important to actually use it to understand how your app is behaving. And the interesting part that I came across this scenario actually yesterday when I was trying to pull my demo app, and I found out that my entire environment has been wiped out. So I actually had to look for a new app to just use it for today's demo. And I came across this app that we previously used in a different context, but I wasn't actually quite sure, okay, what are the different elements? And then I thought, oh, okay, this is actually, I can use Monitor to figure out what's going on with this app, and I'll go through this in a minute. So it is definitely useful to just navigate through the expressions, events, network events, figuring out the dependencies and the flow of the general app. So the way that the Monitor tool is actually architected is that it receives and acts as a hub for all the events throughout user session or an app session. And this way we actually receive all the events in the case of Canvas app or model apps that, or most of the events that are actually being transmitted throughout the session. And examples include things like going through the data connectors, user actions like clicks, calls through the network, and delegation calls in case of the model-driven apps, forms, and form load sequence, and so on. And this is actually where we would love to get your feedback as well in terms of what are some of the different events that would make sense and many of the makers are still looking at. So typically we try to include as many as we can in terms of events, but we're also trying to keep the balance between just adding lots of noise and or trying to avoid to make it an overwhelming experience when you start looking into the sequence of events and reaching that balance of, okay, I can actually get some useful, informative data by looking into monitoring events versus, oh, I'm getting lots of events, I don't know what's going on. The other thing that actually the framework, as I mentioned, is extendable in a way that there is some thinking to just extend this beyond PowerApps, and that could be for things like PVA, Power Virtual Agents, and Power Automate as well, in terms of using the same tool to actually troubleshoot flows and chatbots. So one of the new features when we did the GA last year was to actually a couple of features that we introduced to enable collaborative debugging. And the scenarios mainly are addressed for tech support teams, but also it includes just regular makers who would like to actually get a hand or support and help from different team members or more experienced makers in their organization. So the first feature is called the invite, and the typical scenario for this feature is if, let's say that I'm actually going through a troubleshooting session and I'm just using Monitor, I launched my app, and then I'm going through a sequence of events, but I'm still unable to just figure out what's really going on or what's wrong or what could be potentially optimized. And I need a hand or help from someone, as I mentioned, in my organization. And instead of just throwing a dump of all the events, I can actually establish a real-time collaboration session by using the invite feature. And I'll show this in a minute in the demo, and share that link. And for the new maker or team member, once he or she receives that link, they would actually establish a real-time session where they can start seeing the same exact Monitor session real-time, so that you can actually collaborate with someone else to troubleshoot your application. So this is mainly the invite. The connect user scenario is where, let's say that you're, again, a support team member, and you get this bug reported about a specific set of problems or events that happen after a certain sequence, and you receive this trouble ticket where there's a description of how to regenerate that issue or bug, and then you go through those steps and events, and you're actually not able to just create the same problem. So typically we're just either reply back and saying, hey, I need more details, it's not working, or you just like call that person. So what this feature is offering is to actually the ability again to do a real-time troubleshooting session. So in that scenario, you would just like, if let's say that you are the support person, you would just like create a connect user link and send it to the issue creator and ask him or her to run the app. So they would be running the app and you would be actually in real time monitoring the session and figuring out what's going on without you necessarily having to actually generate the steps or recreate the steps. The original issue creator would just like be running through his or her app and you would be able to see what's going on in the session. And again, I'll run through this in the demo to just like make it a little bit more clear about the difference between the two scenarios and how do they work. So there are certain limitations today to monitor, and we are working on addressing most of, if not all of those scenarios. But today, for instance, you cannot actually establish or troubleshoot a monitor session through the mobile player. And also scenarios like the embedded or custom pages where you actually can go in a model-driven app and create a Canvas app or embedded app. This is another scenario that is not supported. SharePoint custom forms is also not supported, and Teams is not supported. But we do have all of these items or those items actually in our roadmap, and we're working towards a plan to actually cover them in probably throughout this year. Okay, so I'll run through the demo.
That's great to hear that all the current limitations on the monitor are already in your backlog.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's really keen to see the one with Teams integration.
Yeah, that would definitely be of great value as well. So this is the app that and this is available online. I'll provide the link to that solution package that you can actually download, but it's like part of the Northwind Trader package that provides demos and examples for many aspects of studio design, expressions, and so on. And this is definitely not meant to be just like a reference or a model for how to write an app, and it is definitely not optimized, and there are tons of things that are going there. But as I mentioned earlier, I was just like coming through this app and was trying to remember what's going on, how is it working. And in this scenario, I just like show you, okay, how to even start looking into what's going on and what's happening in the sequence of events here. So what this app does, it mainly does upload a set of data from a CDS, like Dataverse entities or tables, and then you can actually see how in a sequential manner the data gets uploaded. It takes a little bit of time, and then you can actually remove it and you go through the sequence. And my kind of like instinct when I saw this, I was like, okay, everything must be actually here in the upload. And I saw this expression and formula, and then I thought, okay, this is actually not happening. There must be something else somewhere. And the easy way to just like do this is to start a monitor session. So actually I have one already running here, but let me kill this one. So in case that you haven't actually seen Monitor before, I'll briefly go through this, but this is in running Monitor in the editing mode. So you just go to Advanced Tool, and then you find the Monitor tool, you open it, and then you have a new tab that actually is connected to that session. So you just hit play, and I'm just running load data here. And then you start seeing all the different events and operations and relevant controls. So you can notice immediately that there is actually a control that is dominating and has lots of events being emitted that is called timer 1. And that the property that is actually being hit is called on timer end. And what's even, I think, more convenient, that you can actually start seeing the formula that is being executed as part of that event. And then you start realizing that, oh, this is actually, there is much more than the load button that is happening. And some of the cool features is like you can actually filter on any of those events. So you can actually just say, okay, would like to see only warnings. And then just like see, okay, I have a few warnings here. It's about delegation, and you can even see which line in the expression this warning is about. So this is mainly about the count row. Let me expand this a little bit more. And the fact that you're actually doing a non-delegated call to CDS, and that actually might create some problems depending on your data size and the number of records that you're trying to retrieve, and also the settings in your app. But again, this is kind of a quick overview of like if you're landing in a completely new app, you would like to figure out what's really going on and what's the sequence of events. And then as we go here, just like we go to tree view, we find out that actually there is a timer, and on timer end, there is the expression that was actually shown in here. And this is a monstrous expression that I would not recommend use as a reference, but it was done intentionally in the context of this app. So now let's say that the other, I think, cool thing that you can do even is to write custom traces that you can actually view. So if you would like to capture and dump specific data in a monitor session, you can do that. And the way that I did this here is by just like, again, creating another timer, and I placed in here a trace. So you can actually use the trace to post a specific custom message in your monitor session and set a severity, and you can even include a custom record. And this is more also like the trace function could be extended to App Insights integration. This is an Azure service. So let's say that you are interested in capturing more data, storing it in Azure so that you can actually have some telemetry generated there. You can use this function, but to the extent of this expression, this is going to appear in our monitor session. So now I remove the comment here, and I'll just run this again, and you'll see in a second. So let's filter by timer 2. So you start seeing actually here the message coming out saying timer trace. And this is the control is timer 2. And this is again a way to just have a custom trace in your monitor session. And this is of course something that you can place anywhere. I am just like for simplicity created a separate timer in here, but it's it could be done inside of any of those controls, inside of any of the events or triggers. So let's say that while I'm actually doing this session, as I mentioned earlier, and let's just remove this filter, I would like to get a hand and someone to help me. So I can click on this invite, and this is limited to the same organization. Let me just kill this session in case thrown out.
I really like how you can use the monitor to reverse engineer the code like you did there. When you pick up a new app you never worked with before, and you can run it and literally see where all the code calls are being made from. That's so handy, in addition to just inspecting traffic too. Are you also going to show the response and request tabs in the monitor?
Yes, in the HTTP request, I'll show that in a second. I was trying to show the invite, and
yeah, no problem.
Thank you for mentioning that. So yeah, let's start again a monitor session and just play. Here is the invite. So I'm inviting another user. This is actually the link for that session. Just like, let me start set of events here. And I'll show another screen where another tab in here. So I just like gonna paste the link that I got. And this is the second person receiving this session. that he or she is going to be providing help to the first user. And there is a little bit of lag, but as you can see, the other person can start actually seeing the data, and just like, I think this is a browser thing. So this is actually a second user. You see here, there is a different user in here, but now you're seeing the same exact events at the session. And it's just like going back to Todd's point about seeing the response and request. So you can actually drill down into the details. I'll just use probably a better example here. By the way, what you're seeing here is I'm just like using 3 screens. So this is the refresh of my screen is not working well, refresh rate, but let me actually use some event from here. So in addition to the formula, you can actually see the exact request that has been submitted through the network and the response that you got back and the status of each of those responses. And you can actually even drill further to the content of the body, the header, and seeing all the headers and the request being sent. So it definitely provides you with this capability to just like drill down if you're interested in capturing more details, even in some cases beyond what Fiddler is offering, or just like sticking to just the sequence and figuring out, okay, what part of the expression was that trying to get executing, and what happened and how things could be optimized.
I think they really go hand in hand really well. I love the request response part you have in Monitor here, especially when you're in a scenario when you're dialing in like a custom connector to a net new API, or maybe you're calling into an Azure function, or trying to get auth set up right. Looking at the request, the response, and the headers gives you all the clues you need to figure out if it's not working right, what you need to change.
Exactly.
And you don't have to go fiddling through Fiddler or the dev tools anymore to sift down and locate just the query, the network traffic that has that. You guys filter it all out here, which makes it so great.
Right.
I have not used that share the feature monitor with somebody before. That looks absolutely outstanding, and I bet help desks around the world want to buy you a beer for that one.
I wouldn't mind, for sure. Yeah, let me just walk you quickly through the last scenario, and this is the connect user to just like show the difference. And you can think again more of the published version of the app. So I'll just close this for now in here, but think of trying to troubleshoot, as I mentioned, an issue that was reported and you're not able to actually regenerate that exact issue. So you just like would run Monitor from here, and the connect user can only be applied and applicable for published version. So if you are inside the studio, you won't be seeing this feature. You just have to actually use a published version in order to enable that feature or use it. So this is where you start seeing the connect user, and similar to the invite, you just say, hey, connect user, choose someone in your organization, and then get a link. I'm not sure why today. I'm using private sessions, and this is the reason that the cookies are not stored, and then I have to refresh every time. And I'm using private sessions to just like differentiate between the two windows that I have, but let's give this a try again. So I'm gonna use this, and this is the created link again for the connect user. And I'm gonna be creating a new session here. So again, this is another window, just pasting the link here.
And just like before, you get to view while they're interacting with it.
No, so this time, I'm now the original issue creator. So I'm the user who reported the issue. I'll be receiving this link to just join, and I'll be seeing the same app. And now, let's say on Teams channel or somewhere, the support person or dev is asking me to go through the sequence of events that generated that problem. So if let's say that, hey, I get an error when I actually press remove and do cancel, I'll be walking through the sequence, and the troubleshooting person, the support person, will be able to see what's going on in here. And this way, you don't actually have to just, again, as I mentioned, like keep writing steps and going back and forth around the different scenarios about what's going on.
Yeah, and telling people how to replicate the error.
Exactly, yeah.
Just show them.
Yeah, so this is, again, a very brief, quick overview of the to connect and invite features that could be used in here, as well as the custom traces that could be generated in case that there is actually a need to just like capture specific parameters or values inside your app. Now, going back to the slides, in terms of like future capabilities and things that we've been working on, probably as you've noticed, you're able to see the events, controls, and so on. But when it comes to variables and being able to just like getting closer to what some of the top features of a full debugger are around, like seeing the values of variables, seeing the values of collections, being able to actually put trace points or breakpoints to some extent to just like get updates and be able to easily trace those changes in the values. This is something that we are working on. And today there is this kind of, I think, hidden capability inside the advanced feature where you can just like go and actually see collections and variables, but it's very limited and it's not like real-time dynamic. So one of the things that we're working on is to actually take that capability, expand it, and merge it as part of Monitor so that we can also enhance this troubleshooting and kind of variables and collection inspection capability as part of Monitor. So those are some of the example features that we're working on now, and we would also love to hear back from the community about any of the other major pain points or features that they are looking for to add and include in Monitor.
Absolutely. I'm sure if anybody has a suggestion, they're going to get that into the chat right away for you. This is a great capability and great demo, and it does so much more than people might think, right? It's more than debugging. It can help you understand an app and how it works and troubleshoot it and all kinds of great things. Thanks for coming on today and walking us through this great feature.
Perfect. Thanks, Todd, for
You're welcome. Yeah. Come back when you've got these new things built. We'd love to see them too. All right. Next and the final part of our call today is Deepak coming on to talk to us about Azure API Management and PowerApps. How are you today, my friend?
I'm good, Todd. How are you?
Good. Yeah, we saw this on the news, right? This was part of our news just a couple PowerApps community calls ago, and you were like, hey, I would love to show that. And I said, awesome, let's do it. So here we are, just a month and a half later or something like that?
Yes. It's a very interesting topic also because it's going to connect that bridge between the code developer and the citizen developer. So I like it. And hopefully when I show it, everyone also like it. So let me start giving a brief of what is API management is. If you guys have not seen it before, API management is a hub for enterprise API. Now, we all know every enterprise has many APIs, or maybe external APIs are available across. What Azure has provided, it provided this control environment where we can have those API controlled and applied policy so that API manager or developer who are building those API can easily publish their API. And as an app developer or the consumer of those API can easily consume those API. Now, if you are an API manager or API developer, and if you are creating a cool API, you always wanted to publish them easily. You also wanted them to be abstracted, secure, and protected. So it's not be visible for, so not everyone can see how you are creating those API. You also want to make sure that it is easy to update and make new revision or version of your API. And at the same time, if you are an app developer, that's most of us are going to be, you need to know what all APIs are available and how you can consume them or how you can use them. And all of these features provided by APIM fairly easily. And on top of that, there can be many policies that APIM manager can define to control those API. And those can be who can access what API. Even in the API, if you have multiple method or operations, you can restrict those operations to a restricted group of people. Now, this is good. This is pretty much what APIM does. Now, what is an API in APIM? So if you have any API, or if you like to have API in APIM, any API that had or that has an HTTP endpoint. So if your API is saying HTTP in the URL, you can easily host that API in the APIM. So this can be an API hosted in Azure, an external API. And if you look at these two icons, this is very important, a logic app. A logic app can be exposed as an API in the APIM. Even if you are creating a function app or Azure function, you can have them as an API available in your APIM. So this is cool. This is all about Azure. Now, why we are talking APIM for Power Platform? So what you can do, if you have an API in the APIM, you can export those API as a custom connector for your Power Platform environment. And that's fairly on few clicks. You can export that API as a custom connector, and that will be available in your environment, whichever environment you are selecting to export for the exporting. It will be available in that environment as a custom connector. And with that, I'll go to the next slide. And in this slide, this is the presentation of if I like to use an API in my app or in my Power Automate right now. As of now, if I like to consume an API in my Power Apps or in my Power Automate, what I have to do today, either I have to create a custom connector, or I have to use an HTTP action, or I need to go with a premium connector. That means a third-party connector. Those are available right now. And if you look at this icon, all of these are a premium features. So you have to have a premium license for the app maker who want to consume these APIs. That problem has been resolved or addressed by the recent announcement from Microsoft. And that's why we are here today. So as I said in the earlier, that you can export your API as a custom connector for Power Platform from APIM. If, and this is very carefully, and this is very interesting, this is where the game is going to change. If you are exporting that API to your Dataverse for Teams environment, that custom connector going to be a standard connector. So you are not paying a premium license for the connector that has been exported from the APIM to your Microsoft Teams environment. So now you can think, you can imagine what you can do now. You can create or use any API that exists right now, or maybe your organization has created some cool app services or logic app that you like to use in your app on your Power Automate. You can use it in few clicks. This is now final picture, what you can do with the Teams and APIM. You can export your API fairly easily from APIM to your Dataverse for Teams environment. And the only price that you are paying is the Azure cost. And trust me, that is very low. I am using this since like a couple of months now. I not even reached the $1.
Absolutely, so, especially if you're calling something like a consumption-based function app, right?
Right.
It might be a few cents a month.
So what I did, I used that APIM feature and I created or I extended. So all of you have seen this app, what I'm presenting right now. This is a My Expense template created by Microsoft. And you have seen the demo of this app many times by many of the great MVP and other users. So what I did, I took this app, I added a feature on this app. So if I go to the expense, I added the scan receipt. So what I extended, I am connecting this app with Azure Cognitive Services, for which I created a logic app that is exposed in APIM as an API. I'm consuming that in my Power App. So whenever I'm going to click on the scan receipt, I'm going to, and again, unfortunately, I cannot mirror my iPhone today. There is some issue going on with that. So as a user, I can select my receipt. And when I click on the process receipt, what's happening right now? I'm sending a request from PowerApps to the APIM, to the logic app, and the logic app using all these cognitive services and responding back all the receipt line item that I have here. There's one more API that I added here. As you can see, here's a currency. So let me pick another receipt. So this is the receipt, as you can see here. Once I process, So what you can do now, you can pick a receipt that is not in the US locale. You can pick any receipt that is outside US. So for example, if you have a receipt that is for UK, right? And that's the receipt that I'm going to pick. So you can change the locale. And this is all of this via cognitive services provided by the Azure. I can click on process receipt, and what it is going to do, it's going to process that receipt, provide me the response, and then I'm going to use another API that I have hosted in the APIM for currency conversion. So once it's loaded, I will show you that. It take a little bit of time. Meanwhile, any question, Todd?
I see one here from Krishna. When we export APIs as a custom connector and time goes by, if my APIs have gone through changes, do I need to re-export the connector, or will it automatically refer to the main source of the APIs?
Yeah, so to answer your question, if you are using, in my case, like for example, if you have created a logic app or function app, and if you are making changes there, you don't need to re-export because it's going to pass the request. So there's a backend. If backend is changing, you don't need to make changes. But if you have made some update on the API itself, and if you are making some changes there, then you need to re-export it. So
like you change the arguments perhaps that you pass into the API, something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Or if you are passing any custom header.
Now, when you've done that and you do re-export the connector, have you done that? Have you seen how you've tried that already? How well did that behave? Did you have to rip everything out of the Power App to get it to pick the changes up and save and shut down the Power App and reopen it? Or did you just bang, put the new connector in and it picked it up?
Yeah, so unless you are keeping the name of the connector same, you don't need to rip the Power Apps off. So,
nice.
So you need to, so there is a little challenge there. You need to remove the older one first. So your app will break for a moment and then you can re-export and then it will automatically pick it up.
Okay.
So this is my receipt that was not in the dollar. So there is another API that I'm calling, and what this is going to do is going to convert the pound to the dollar in the real time. Now, the app itself is not what we are trying to show here. What I'm trying to show here, how you can easily do it without creating a custom connector or without even calling a Power Automate from here. So if I jump back to my Power Apps, so this is my Azure. And once you create your APIM service, and if you go there, you can see all of your API listed here. You're going to see many API here. But the API that I'm using for this demo is one of these ones. This is for cognitive services. And you can see here, there is very simple API because I'm using the logic app. So this is my logic app that I've created. And the logic app also pretty simple. This is a very simple HTTP request response logic app. And if you have created a Power Automate before, this looks pretty similar. So the only thing I'm doing in this HTTP, I'm asking user to provide the information about the request. So input data is actual data of the receipt, the request type, and the locale. And then making a call to this cognitive service. So for the demo, what I used Form Recognizer API. This is in preview. There is another one that is already live, but I use preview because it has more functionality. Now, I'm using logic app because now what you can do with the logic app, as you can see here, I'm asking user to provide the request type. And right now I'm providing request type as a receipt. But what I can do here, I can also use the same logic app for business card reader. And the only thing that user need to provide me the request type as a business card, because that's the request that they need to provide in that case. And I can also use it for another endpoint for the layout. So one logic app can address all of these different scenarios, and you can use the same response because the response is very universal from these cognitive services. You just need to read it correctly. So now you have one logic app that is providing you all the services in the cognitive. The second API that I have created is for currency conversion. Now this is an external API, and as you can see here, this is my API that I'm calling right now. And the only thing I'm doing, the simple method, passing the to currency and from currency and getting the response back. Now, you might be thinking that this is super complex, what I'm showing right now. It may take a lot of time because I was showing it to someone and he said that, yes, looks cool, you can do a lot, but then PowerApps Maker is getting dependent on the app, APIM and APIM developer, or they need to learn something. So let me show you quickly in 5 minutes. You can actually create an API in the APIM and use it. So for that purpose, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this National Weather Service API. Very simple API. What it does, once you pass the area, there is a state name. It's going to give you if there's any alert, any weather alert is there. So if you look at this example, this is my API, and this is my query parameter that I need to pass. To create an API, you go to your APIM screen, click on Add API. Now you have multiple options which you can pick from. You can start from the blank API. You can start from Open API. Open API is a swagger or a definition that you get. Sometimes you get the Open API definition for most of the API. You can pick WADL or WSDL, logic apps, app service, and function apps. All of that is available. What we're going to do, we're going to do the blank API here. So click on the blank API. Just give a name. That's the name. That's the display name of your API. So the URL. This is my URL, as you can see here. So you can paste the URL. Then you need to provide a name for the suffix. And this URL, what you are seeing here, this is the URL what every app developer is going to know about your API. They will never know if the API is this one. So that's another layer of security that added by APIM. So the end user or consumer will never know what API is actually getting called. They're always going to know this API. So.
And this is also how you can go back and rev your API.
Yes.
Point it at a new API or dev or prod or QA, whatever.
Right. So you can provide any name, whichever you like the end user to see. So I'm going to type alert, click on create. And what this is going to do is going to create the API. Now this is how an empty API is created. We need to add operation to API. What should happen when someone calls this API? So I click on this add operation. Again, very similarly, I can type any display names that I like. Because this is a get operation, I'm trying to get information about the alert on this particular state. So you will say get. And if you don't have any method defined in your API, like in here, there's no method, it's just the plain API that I'm calling. You can always just type the / here. And then in the query parameter, and this is where you can define different header request response that you needed. So in the query parameter, you can define a query parameter. In our case, the query parameter is the state, as you can see, or the area, sorry. And this is the default value that you can pass on. And once the user is going to call this API, they can pick from the default value, or they can override it. And I will click on save. And none of the information that I need to pass here. So let's go ahead and test it. And I'm going to bypass the course proxy. This is for cross-domain calling, because that weather API is going to throw an error if we don't pass this. And I'm going to select my state and click send. So what it's going to do is going to work. And you can see here, I got all the alert that is right now in the Texas. So we created the API. Now it's simpler than creating. You can export it. Now, if you click on these three dots, click on export. Now you have option for Power Apps and Power Automate. Once you click on that, APIM is going to pick all the environment, those are available. It's going to And again, you can actually export this to a standard environment. Also, you can export it to Teams. So I'm going to pick my Teams environment here and click export. And meanwhile, while it's exporting, let me quickly go to the flow.microsoft.com so we can see that exported connector there.
Hi, Deepak. I have a question.
Yep.
My name is Ramon. I was just wondering regarding like the API management version that you're working with. Like, which version is this? Because I see they have like different price levels there, right? So I was wondering, like, which one did you pick? How
Yes.
much does it cost?
Right.
Sort
So,
of.
yes. So I picked the standard consumption-based version. And if you go to the Azure pricing tool that Azure had, it actually give you a good understanding of how much price is going to be. But if you look at these notification here, I had 200 credit long back, and I'm already expended. And I'm just not using APIM. I'm using other features also. So because this is consumption based, and it's going to be around, I think, 0.00 something dollar per APIM call. But you can definitely calculate all of that in the Azure calculator too.
Good, thank you.
Hey, another question. Can API return tabular data?
Yes. So this is and that's the cool thing about it, because in the APIM, what you can do, there is twofold of it. Your actual API can definitely respond to your any tabular format or the JSON, right? What you can also do in APIM, you can define more response object. So if you look at this one, and if I go to the definition here, you can define your definition for any response type that you like to have. So for example, in case I define this response. So you can do a lot complex, and you can also do very simple, like we are just doing for this weather API. So yes, now answer your question, yes, you can definitely define the tabular response as needed by your API. So I go back to my environment where I exported that connector that we just created. Under custom connector, I should be seeing that connector that I just published, and here it is. Now, if I added this one, you can see all of the information that we have created. And now the cool thing about in this connector, you won't see that weather API at all. Mm-hmm. This is the API that connector is calling. And if I go to the definition, it has the get, and it has this API that we have created. Now,
and if you use the monitor, that's the URL you would see in the monitor too, not
yes.
the other one. Mm-hmm.
And then again, same thing, you can test it from here too. So pretty quickly, you can create these API. Now, again, as I said, you can start from the very basic, like I did here for this one, or you can go very complex from logic app to function app to the app service. So there is a totally what I say, the bandwidth of possibilities here that you can try. Mm-hmm. Like for example, Graph API is very useful for Power Apps or Power Automate. You can create an API for the Graph API where you can pass in, you can operate multiple graph operations. And there are so many things that you can do.
Yeah. And you can save yourself a lot of money at the same time. That's for sure.
And with this receipt scanner or for this cognitive service that I'm using, it actually very real business case, because now you can have logic app. Again, logic app is also not that much expensive. And you can operate all of these different operations, not even these operations, those are already exist. What you can also do, you can create your custom model with these API. So you don't need to, there is much dependency that you can remove by using these things. So that's it. I think if you have any other question, I'm happy to answer.
So this is a brand new feature. I have a question for you then. Brand new feature, right? You and I started chatting about, hey, that would be cool to get on the call. And how many hours did you put into it from the time where you had the leave request Power App installed until you went, okay, now it does what we saw in the demo today?
Right. So as you can see here, the number of API that I have in my APIM. So the most of the time that I invest is actually trying to see what is the best API that I can pick from to use, right? That's the most time I took, because if you can see here, I have picked many APIs. I have the graph and the form recognizer. The actual app, actual app creation and the demo doesn't take that long. Maybe this is a few hours of work. The logic app also very simple, because if you are doing the Power Automate, and this logic app is very simple, straightforward logic app. But if you are starting and if you are new to this whole APIM, I think if you spend maybe a week understanding and analyzing what you need to do, that's enough for you to get started and start doing things.
This sounds like one of those really good scenarios for what Donna talked about in her latest blog post when she talked about fusion dev teams, which is, if you didn't read that, is combinations of pro developers and citizen developers working together. I could totally see pro developers getting in Azure here, dialing in all the APIs, and then just basically saying, hey, all citizen devs, here's your API set for the whole org, have fun.
Right.
Hey, is this only available in Teams though?
Actually not. If you want to use this as a free or the standard connector, that's the team. But you can export any API from APIM to any environment, any Power Platform environment. The only difference between if you are exporting it to the normal or the like a regular environment, it's going to be a custom connector that is premium right now. But again, you can do the calculation, how many premium license you want versus what is your Azure cost.
Very good. That's a great demo. So Reza put in a thing in chat here about your YouTube channel. It looks like you've already made a deeper dive video on this too.
Yeah. So this is where I'm starting. So again, this video may not be the perfect for everyone, but yeah. So I thought of putting this video a little bit more detailed because I knew the 15 minutes is not going to be enough. Plus, we don't want it to be confused that this is pro code. It is pro code. But it's not only pro code. You can actually, as a citizen developer, you can use this feature as of today if you like to. Like if you are building the Power Automate, if you're creating those HTTP request response, and if you're creating custom connector, this is going to be pretty much like that. Of course, we are not thinking that you are going to create a function app or writing like a .NET application that you're going to host it. Yes, that is pro code definitely, but give it a try. You will like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot more configuration back on the Azure side here than anything, right? You're not really writing any code there in the API. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That's a great demo too. I really like how you hook those two different pieces in there and combine them into an existing app too, which is always great.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, all right. Well, my turn to take back the screen then. We had so much good content today that we've gone over, so we're going to need to be pretty quick as we wrap things up today. You can go learn more about this here on API management at this link at the official Microsoft Docs about it. And then we have exciting recent news, Chuck.
Why don't you do the first one?
All right, so our exciting announcement this month is that we're bringing back Demo Extravaganza again for 2021. And so congratulations to Reza and Deepak, who happens to be on the call and just showed us that here for winning in the past. Who's going to win this year? And so entries start in May. But you can start working on your Power Apps now. And we will start voting for who makes it to the final in June. And then in July, we'll have the Demo Extravaganza call and pick the winner. So we're going to do something a little bit different this year on it. Instead of individual entries, if you want to form a team to achieve ultimate Demo Extravaganza glory, you can do that. So feel free to reach out to each other, and I would love to see a little community trash talking between teams get going as we lead up. That might be a lot of fun. We have such a great community here. So everybody, you're welcome to join that, build your best app, and we'll see who wins this year.
Todd had a great idea as well to actually add a separate category for components. And depending on the number of entries for components, we might break that up into a separate session. But I thought that was an awesome idea, Todd. Thank you for actually adding that.
Sure. Component party.
Component party. It's a big part. It's one of my favorite things. I think it is Brian Dang's favorite feature of Power Apps. Okay, so let's go through the rest of the list. Is source code files for Canvas apps. While it's a fairly unassuming title, this is actually huge. What it tells is it enables us to go out and enable and write your PowerApps Canvas apps in Visual Studio Code and put them in GitHub and actually do diffing, and enables lots and lots of ALM scenarios. So again, unassuming title, huge implications. Go out and take a look at it. Thanks to you guys. You guys actually introduced me to Paul, one of the Power Addicts community members who actually had a stroke back in 2017, kind of lifted himself up from his bootstraps with the help of Shane Young and Rory, and actually went out and wrote a Power App that helps stroke victims regain their motor control. So that's actually a really cool one. It's actually, the application is both in the community and his story, which is pretty uplifting, is on the blog. So thank you for the introductions. And Paul, if you're listening, it was an absolute pleasure working with you. And finally, if you haven't signed up for the Power Platform Bootcamp, it's going to be great. My peer, John Levesque, is actually driving a lot of the keynotes. My user group, the Vancouver user group, is actually signed up. I think I'm actually doing a presentation for the global one, but the URL's right there. So Todd, Speedy Gonzalez, Chuck, back to you.
Right on. Okay, so we would like to give a shout out to everybody in the PowerApps community. Keep using that PowerApps CC hashtag. Thanks to all the folks who've shared the awesome things they're working on in the last month with that hashtag. We'll continue to recognize you on the call and see all your great content. So thanks everybody for sharing again. If you like this call and you like PowerApps and things like this and learning about it, there's a couple other places you can learn great stuff like this too. The first one's called the Power Addicts Hangout. You can learn more about that on wearePowerAddicts.com. They meet every month as well, just like we do. And in this call, and there's tons of people there sharing awesome things they're doing with PowerApps, as well as a very active Q&A. In addition to that, Donna and Sarah have their awesome Less Code, More Power series. This is a much smaller video series in terms of how long things are. We typically shoot for an hour on this call, but they have like 5 to 15 minute series there. I know I've seen Brian's on there. I think I've seen Brian Knight on their show before. And so they have a whole bunch of tiny, littler shows on very focused pieces of Power Platform. So I encourage you to check that out as well. And we'd all just like to say thanks again. This is our 3rd year doing the PowerApps community call. We have a lot of fun putting this together every month and just seeing all the energy and passion in the community. The recording will be available soon on the Microsoft 365 Developer YouTube channel, and you can also follow us on Twitter. Thanks again to everyone behind the scenes and all of you for coming and being a part of this every month. We'll see you next month on February 17 at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Have a good one.